It's the appointed time and we have a quorum. I call the meeting to order and I ask members to be seated. We can ask deputations attending the special meeting and representatives from the administration and from the Liquor Licensing Board to enter. Members, you should have with you two documents. One is the guideline procedures for assessing liquor license applications, and another paper that is the procedure for assessing liquor license. We have the administration and also the chairman of the Liquor Licensing Board, Mr. Yang Ho-po, with us. And I will ask the paper to be presented before I ask deputations and individuals to speak. You will each have 3 minutes, and then afterwards we'll have about an hour to have a discussion on this topic. First of all, let me welcome government representatives and those from the Liquor Licensing Board for attending this meeting. Thank you. This is a panel on food safety and environmental hygiene special meeting on liquor licensing, guidelines and procedures for assessing liquor license applications. This is a public hearing, and we can afterwards have some discussions on this topic. Let me explain to you what's in front of you. You see on the panel, channel 0 is the floor. Channel 1, Cantonese. 2, English. Please choose the channel you'd like to use. First of all, let me ask the Undersecretary of the FH of the Food and Environmental Hygiene Bureau to present the paper to us. That is the guidelines and procedures for assessing liquor license applications. Hey, Professor Chan, please. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we have the relevant government departments and the Liquor Licensing Board in this meeting. We're here to listen to your views on the guidelines on assessing liquor license applications. From July to September 2011, the Food and Environmental Hygiene Bureau, the FHB, have conducted a public consultation. The trade supported trade facilitation measures, but they did not favor tightening of the regulation over liquor licensed premises. The representatives and residents of local communities urged the government to impose more stringent control on liquor licensed premises and strengthen enforcement actions against those causing nuisance. And a significant number of respondents pointed out that safety should be accorded first priority in vetting liquor license applications from upstairs bars. And the panel of the last term on nuisance, noise, etc. have expressed concerns. A lot of people are concerned that upstairs bars and clubs have mushrooms, and there are problems cost. As a result, they asked the administration to impose more stringent control on upstairs bars. And under Section 17(2) of the Dutiable Commodities Liquor Regulations, it is incumbent upon the LLB, the Liquor Licensing Board, to give due consideration to all relevant issues, including A, whether the applicant is a fit and proper person to hold the license, and B, whether the location and structure of the premises and the fire safety and hygienic conditions are suitable for the sale of liquor, and C, whether the grant of the license is contrary to public interest. And as to whether the granting of the license is contrary to public interest, the board have to take into account the prevailing socio-economic environment, public attitude, and other societal problems. In relation to each application, the circumstances will be taken into consideration, and also public interest will be taken into considerations too. We think these criteria are suitable, so there is no need to impose additional requirements on upstairs bars. There is a guideline on assessing liquor license applications, setting out the criteria to be considered when assessing an application. Hong Kong is a metropolis. We aim at creating an environment that is conducive to the business operations, but on the other hand, we have the duty to ensure the welfare of the public so that they will not be subject to nuisance caused by liquor licensed premises. The LLB has been discharging a very challenging gatekeeping role in seeking to strike a reasonable balance between the benefits brought by the commercial and economic activities and the social cost to the community in terms of public order, building safety, environmental hygiene, and nuisances. They have spent a lot of meeting time on the guidelines and the proposals. We thank the Liquor Licensing Board. With your permission, Chairman, the Chairman of the Board, or the Liquor Licensing Board, would like to say a few words on the procedure. Mr. Yao Ho Bo, the Chairman, and 6 members of the Board, welcome to you all. And in relation to the guidelines, the criteria, you would like to say a few words, you may do so. Thank you. Members, deputations, and individuals, as Professor Chan said, me and members of the board attended this meeting to listen to your views on procedures and guidelines. We are an independent statutory body established under the Dutiable Commodities Liquor Regulations to consider applications for liquor license. The board has to give thorough consideration of the applications pursuant to Section 17. We will have thorough discussion, taking into account all factors, and listen to the applicants before we make a decision. The LLB has formulated guidelines pursuant to the views collected from the public consultation. You'll find the information in front of you. The guidelines set out the specific factors to be taken into consideration when assessing applications. Since there are more problems caused by upstairs spas, under the 3 major criteria in the guideline, we have set out that in assessing applications of upstairs spas, special considerations will have to be given. When we formulated the guidelines, we've also reviewed the effectiveness of existing conditions, and in relation to some of them, amendments were introduced to better reflect the conditions and to make them more effective, and so as to take into consideration the actual condition. So license holders will have to have a relevant experience in operation of liquor licensed premises. We require the licensee to, during designated period, attend a seminar on liquor licensing. And since alcohol will impair one's judgment and physical coordination, so when something happens, evacuation from upstairs spas will be more difficult than those at grade. So we propose that, taking into account the views of relevant departments and the actual condition, the board may consider a more stringent safety parameter. Say, for example, 90% of the full capacity of at-grade licensed premises, and use that as one of the conditions. This aims to protect the staff, patrons, and other use of the premises and other users on the same floor. Because of noise problems, which is particularly problematic in certain licenses, we have in the guidelines set out the additional licensing conditions on noise prevention. Say, for example, the requirement to have double glazing windows and doors, and to ask qualified surveyors to conduct an assessment on whether these measures are effective. We hope that through the guidelines, practitioners will have something to rely on, and this will also allay concern of members of the public. We welcome stakeholders to express their views. Finalized guidelines will be put on the board's website to enhance transparency.
Thank you, Mr. Yao. Now I'll invite the deputations to express their views. Due to our arrangement, we can only give each of you 3 minutes to speak. And I'm also duty-bound to remind you that for your speech today is not protected by the powers and privileges Legislative Council ordinance. That means that you will have to be held responsible for what you speak. Well, just now, Madam Jiang Lai-king, a member of the Central and Western District Council, has given us a notification. And she said that because she has another meeting afterwards, she wants to speak first. So I will first invite Madam Jiang Lai-king to speak first, and then I'll ask the other deputations to speak. Madam Jiang. Thank you. I'm sorry for making that request, because at 3 p.m. I have to go to another meeting. I'm a member of the Central and Western District Council, and the Lan Kwai Fong Bar District gradually took shape in the 90s, and then in the 80s, and then in the 90s, you can see that there were not, well, in the initial stage, there were not that many residential buildings in the surrounding areas. However, later on, there was the building of the central escalator, and then in 1941, the first bar was seen in Downton Street. And you can see that now there are many restaurants and bars in that area. Whenever a shop closes there, a new restaurant or bar will replace the original shop. Now the area is called Soho. However, that is a residential area at the mid-levels. Of course, the central escalator has brought about a lot of customers to that area. However, problems are also brought to that area. The major problem is noise nuisance. We have heard a lot of complaints. As DC member, from 94 up to now, we have received numerous complaints concerning noise. First of all, it's about noise from bars, even from air conditioners, and of course from customers. And for some customers, while they're patronizing some bars, they may go out to make phone calls, that is noise, and when they hail a taxi afterwards, that's another source of noise. So it's really hard for the residents there. In particular, if it's during the examination season, students may be studying at home and they can hear the noise emanating from these bars downstairs. And also there may be taxi drivers or other drivers living upstairs. This kind of noise would really have an impact on their sleeping quality. The HAD would always come to ask for views concerning the establishments of bars there. So we always raise objections at the LLB meetings. In 1996, that is during the urban council era, there were discussions saying that more licensing conditions should be imposed. For example, the windows and doors will be closed after 6 p.m. and liquor can only be sold until 11 p.m. And after over 10 years, that is in the past 5 to 6 years, these rules have not been applied rigidly because there have been more and more bars and the licensees making more and more requests. Well, they will say that it's not enough for them to sell liquor up to 11 p.m. They want to sell it until 2 or 3 a.m. So many of the conditions have been changed. That is, now they can sell liquor till 2 or 3 a.m. And we think that more stringent licensing conditions should be imposed. And the licensees should have the ability to control the noise before a license can be granted. Let's invite Mr. Kah-kit from Institution of Dining Art to speak. Thank you. We represent the catering industry, and we have about 2,000 members, which are restaurants and eateries. Now, according to the present proposal, you are saying that licensees should take part in seminar on liquor license before they can be granted license. We agree to that because they should have the basic safety knowledge. We think that this kind of seminar should be organized directly by the LLB or the FHD because if it's contracted out, the cost will be very high and the cost of licensees will be increased. As for a more stringent safety coefficient for capacity limit, well, we think that it is very difficult to define upstairs bars. And if the capacity limit is set at 90%, we would object to it because we are paying 100% rent, and this would stifle a lot of bar business. And we think that if this is really going to be implemented, we hope that there can be a grace period of at least 5 years so that we can finish the present lease first and then we can consider whether we want to continue to operate. And also in the proposal, there are suggested additional licensing conditions concerning noise abatements. Now, for a lot of commercial buildings, I mean, in its design, it may not be suitable for double-glazed windows to be installed, or it can be very expensive if we have to employ qualified persons to carry out this kind of works, and this will significantly increase our cost. And when it comes to noise, I think it's under the jurisdiction of the Environmental Protection Department. If complaints are received, prosecutions can be instituted, and the violators can be sued. I think this kind of regulation is already enough. And also for upstairs bars, if the number of upstairs bars has already reached half of the units of a building, then this may have exceeded the acceptable level of the AOLB. We think that the relevant authorities should look at the nature of the buildings, not just use the number of units as the basis. For example, how many people are going in and out, how many number of elevators are there in the buildings, etc. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chin Chun-ming from Hong Kong Bar and Club Association. Mr. Chin. Chairman, members, and government representatives, good afternoon. My name is Chin Chun-ming. I speak on behalf of the Hong Kong Bar and Club Association, and I would like to say something on behalf of our industry. Well, just now, another representative has said something very well, so I'm not going to repeat the points he's made already. Now, we object to the tightening of licensing conditions concerning upstairs bars. There are several reasons. Because we think that now the licensing conditions are already very stringent, because now there is already a capacity limitation, and already there are limitations concerning the time of selling liquor, the duty hours of the licensees, etc. And also we have to go to a lot of government departments before we get our license. For example, the FHD, the police, the buildings department, the fire safety, fire services department, and LLB, etc. So I think all this is already very stringent. We do not need more conditions. And just now, as Mr. Yao said just now, well, for what he said, I think actually there are a lot of problems. For example, decreasing the number of bars. Well, Mr. Yao, have you visited upstairs bars? For upstairs bars, well, most of the time they can only do 2 days of business in a week. On weekday nights, they're very quiet, and there's not much business. And if you want to cut the capacity limit by 10%, that's stifling the operations. Now, for upstairs bars, the area is normally about 1,500 square feet, and for their capacity limit mostly is 50 persons. But please remember that this includes the number of staff, and we have like 4 to 5 people working there. So we just have 40 odd customers a night. So do you think we can survive? Because the rent is really high, and if it's in Causeway Bay, we have to pay a rent of $70,000 to $80,000 per month. Now, of course, you have your own considerations, so I can understand that. However, if you tighten the licensing conditions, then there will be more unlicensed upstairs bars. Now, in the past, this may not be the case. However, now there are more and more unlicensed bars. Now, they will choose places where the rent is low, for example, industrial buildings. And because they do not have to hire authorized persons to do authorized work, so their cost is much lower. And in the first year of operation, they would already be making profits. But you're regulating the licensed bars, so most of the people would like to run unlicensed bars. Now, actually, our industry has been doing something. For example, we have launched a scheme of quality bar label, and we hope that our industry can make improvements. And also, we are cooperating with the Tsim Sha Tsui police station, and we are implementing a quality upstairs bar charter. So please give us some time.
Pemberton from the Lion Rock Institute.
唔該。
Noting the government's continued dedication to addressing public concern and thanking LegCo for hosting today's discussion, frankly speaking, this panel, just as additional guidelines and procedures for upstairs bars, is redundant. Existing assessment regulations already govern every single concern expressed in the public consultation. Cries for increased regulation for liquor licensing in upstairs bars are misdirected. Public order, building safety, environmental nuisances, all these concerns are already subject to regulation. If anything, this continued discussion merely reflects a dearth of public participation in liquor licensing process and a lack of public knowledge of existing regulations. Additionally, over-regulation will be seen to the public as pandering to those unfamiliar and lacking in either time or interest to become better acquainted with liquor licensing regulations. Rather than blindly adding more guidelines and procedures to the existing extensive list for assessing liquor licensing applications, the root of public concern would be best pacified by ensuring that enforcement of the regulations is up to par, and encouraging dissidents to translate words into action and express their views to the Liquor Licensing Board directly during the liquor licensing application process. The Lion Rock Institute, in fact, respectfully suggests that we consider reducing the regulations for upstairs bars. In terms of resources, Hong Kong is severely struggling with land and space, and upstairs bars are examples of eggs in the beer of our strong economy. These bars represent Hong Kong people's ingenuity in making productive use of space. Lower regulations, but strong enforcement of those basic regulations that protect public safety and protect public order, for example, allows businesses such as upstairs bars to capitalize on space that was previously not well used without infringing upon public order and public safety. We need a leaner and more flexible liquor licensing process, and we must not erect barriers that prevent entrepreneurs from making the most of Hong Kong's limited space. In doing so, we widen the circle of opportunity and deepen the meaning of our economic freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pem.
Thank you, Ms. Pemberton. Next, Mr. Yu from Civic Party. I represent the Civic Party in relation to the guidelines and assessment and procedure on assessing liquor license applications. We have 4 points to make. First, in relation to the guidelines and procedure, they are mainly targeted at upstairs bars. There are more and more such bars in densely populated areas with a high population density. You will have to take into account the impact on residents, patron safety, and also business facilitation measures. The liquor license holders will have to complete the seminar on liquor licensing before a deadline, so that they can have their knowledge on this area enhanced, and it's also a chance for them to exchange views with others. And liquor license holders should be encouraged to regularly attend such seminars and to invite law enforcement agencies and district councillors to attend exchange sessions to enhance communications. In relation to capacity limit, the board proposed imposing a 90% of a normal capacity limit. The objective of a capacity limit is to ensure that in case of safety, operators can effectively evacuate customers and staff members. The administration has to justify the reasons behind the 90% capacity limit, to explain that this is not an arbitrary decision. And in relation to noise pollution, the Civic Party agrees that bars should put in place effective noise insulation devices. Say, for example, double glazed windows and doors, and noise impact assessment, so that nuisance will be brought to a minimum. law enforcement agencies should step up their inspections and checks to reduce problems on noise, light, and nuisance. Thank you. Next is Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong, Mr. Chan. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chan. I'm from DAB. There are more and more upstairs bars. They cause noise pollution, traffic problems, problems of law and order. It has caused great public concern. We have a number of points to make. First, we agree the suggestion to tighten the control on upstairs bars and to impose additional licensing conditions to require license holders to attend seminars. We hope that these measures will reduce nuisance caused to nearby residents. We think that when vetting applications for bars in densely populated areas, they should also take into account risk to public safety and interest. And the number of licensed premises in a multi-story building should be limited. And there should also be additional conditions, say for example, liquor selling hours and the capacity limit to reduce nuisance. When vetting applications for upstairs bars, they should also focus on safety, say for example, width and location of means of escape. Upstairs bars should not be allowed to exist in buildings with only one staircase because in an emergency situation, residents will have to share the staircase with patrons. There are more and more such bars. Some of the licensed premises commit repeated contraventions of licensing conditions. They've also taken up space that doesn't belong to them. So the administration should step up. The board should liaise with relevant departments and step up enforcement actions. We hope that application procedures for granting applications should be tightened. Currently, there is insufficient channels to collect views of the community. Very often, their views are neglected. There should be more extensive consultations and attach more importance on their views. In-depth investigations should be conducted when they've received views. Thank you. Next, the Federation of Hong Kong and Kowloon Ballroom and Nightclub Merchants, Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee. Good afternoon, everyone. We fully understand the concerns of residents and legislators. I'd like to say to you that nowadays, whatever it is, there are objections, whether it is a beach or reclamation. And legislators neglect the truth because they want votes. They want the vote, so they will support objections. They suppress SMEs. Our competitiveness fell to the third. If that is the case, we will go to the bottom. Before 1997, there weren't as many protests, but yet we had a blooming society. And now there is monopoly by conglomerate. But instead of tackling conglomerates, you focus on SMEs. There are telecommunications companies, jewelry shops, goldsmiths. They've taken all the space at grade, so we're forced upstairs. But you don't do anything about it. And the police don't do anything about unlicensed premises. We may as well close all our premises down or operate without a license, or we will rely on CSSA. Previously, this was handled by the FHB, and they know that it's a hot potato. They pass it on to the Liquor Licensing Board. And what about the composition of the board? How often do they meet? Are they elected? You discriminate against our sector. It's unfair to applicants. First, you have to deal with the composition of the board. At least half of the members should come from our sector. It's just like the TIC, the tourism industry council, so that our voices will be heard. So, will you later talk about license at grade or license in basements? You've completely neglected the situation and reality. Decisions are made subjectively, and in 5.1 and 5FI, so it's about if half of the premises in a building are upstairs bars, it is intolerable. Currently, there are already license conditions, and of course the buildings department have been doing something. You should not usurp them. Our business environment is getting more and more unfavorable, so you should not focus on upstairs bars. You should step up your enforcement on unlicensed premises. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Next. Entertainment Business Rights Concern Group, Chairman Ms. Chan. Thank you. We have some comments on the guidelines and procedure. The LLB should listen more to different views, especially those from the sector. And there should be some degree of transparency so that the guidelines can be implemented. There is no legal definition on upstairs bars. Is it the case that as long as there is a bar bench in an upstairs premises, is called an upstairs bar? If that is the case, then there will be confusion and it's not fair. We object to reducing the safety margin by imposing a percentage. The safety margin are set down after having taken consideration of all the factors. Reducing it by percentage is unfair and unscientific. Previous incidents happened not because of that, and imposing a discount on it will not resolve the problems. And instead, you will be punishing the law-abiding premises and stifling the room for survival. Perhaps some upstairs premises or basements are not suitable to be used for liquor licensed premises, and if that is the case, the public should be notified about these unsuitable premises so that investors will not have unknowingly made the wrong adjustments. Yes, we agree that residents are concerned. That you would like us to attend the seminars, but when it comes to the designated period of time, you should give us more information, because we don't want to miss the seminars and have our license revoked. A fair and effective guidelines should be put in place. We hope the Development Bureau would earmark sites for us to operate like a bar area or an entertainment area, and this will resolve all the problems. Next, Democratic Party, Mr. Ho. Of course, I'm speaking on behalf of the Democratic Party, but I'd also like to speak on behalf of a group of people from in Kowloon City, Mongkok, Tsim Sha Tsui, Central, Western. These people are suffering because they can't sleep. Children can't concentrate in their studies. They have a very strong objection because there is an effective complaint mechanism under the current system. Very often I speak on behalf of the residents in board hearings, but my efforts are to no avail. The complaint mechanism is practically non-existent. There is noise outside the bars. A report is made to the police. Police arrive, they disperse. The police leaves, they come back. The place is soiled, then you call the FHD. They came and the place is cleaned. They left and then the place is soiled again. So apart from going to the department, there is nothing else, nowhere else you can go. It's really puzzling. If you look at other jurisdictions, no licensing board wash their hands on enforcement and regulation. Hong Kong is the only board that approves a license but without regulating or enforcing the relevant legislations. And in relation to the various districts I mentioned, we've lodged numerous complaints, had numerous meetings with you. Why? Is it that there were no proposals in relation to at-grade premises? In the Central Western District Council, there was a motion passed to express regret. And of course, upstairs bars, we support the proposals. We want you to tighten the regulation. But premises at grade cause more problems to residents. In comparison, there are more complaints against at-grade premises. Why did you not do anything about at-grade premises instead and just focused on upstairs bars? And that should be a reform on the complaint mechanism. Say, for example, in a designated area. Sorry, can I have a bit more time? Currently, as long as there are 20 residents complaining within a radius of 400 meters, then they will be entertained. But they just listened to the complaint and left it at that. Perhaps you should do it this way, where there are complaints made, complaints that are not anonymous, then the case will be heard. People have lost confidence on the current regime because no matter how many objections there are and how many complaints there are, license will still be approved, albeit one that is of a shorter term. Sorry, Mr. Ho, 10 more seconds. There are 2 or 3 members in the board. They are from the sector, but they led the discussion. They made all the decisions. The others, they are just yes men.
下一位係中西區酒牌問題關注組嘅成員，屈網坤先生，屈先生。
各位好嚇，咁我諗我頭先聽好多意見咧，就業界同埋議員啦。咁我自己就本身就住喺就係問題嘅中環中區嘅。咁我自己本身咧都有一段時間曾經每星期都打次電話俾警局去投訴呢個噪音。咁我完全明白，因為我自己都喺教市場學，咁我明白做生意嗰個每個人都要做生意，維係佢嘅。
Again, liquor license premises. Well, for residents living in those areas, I think the nuisances brought to them are really too huge. Now let us talk about Soho. Soho was originally a very quiet area. However, nowadays on weekends it becomes a very noisy area. And at night, for example, at 2 a.m. I visited once there was this incident that is at 2 a.m. I went to this bar asking the people to keep quiet, and they asked me how come we live there. Well, I told them that I've been living here for over a decade and your bar has only been open for 2 to 3 years. So I really regret this kind of incident. Well, we've had a lot of complaints about this kind of bars, and you may not be too aware of this. And today I have several minutes. I would really like to tell you how I feel. Just now, Mr. Hui also mentioned this. That is after 11 or 12 at night. If you go to those bar areas, you can still see many customers standing outside the bars, smoking and drinking. So the children living upstairs cannot have a good night's sleep, and also for people going to that area, they would also feel that the noise pollution there is very serious. And at 3 or 4 a.m., if you go to those areas, you can see shattered glass bottles everywhere. So I would like to really thank the FEHD staff. They would clean these areas before dawn. However, we have seen many other cases, street fightings, quarreling, all kinds of incidents. So maybe after a certain hour, you should restrict the customers to a greater extent. And lately, I've heard that a bar is trying to renew its liquor license, and survey forms are issued. But our building is just opposite to this bar, and we do not receive these survey form. And for this bar, in the past 1 or 2 months, it kept very quiet because it knew that it's going to renew its liquor license. So that's why it's been behaving in the past few months. Yes, Mr. Watt, thank you. Next, Hong Kong Bars and Karaoke Rights Advocacy. Vice Chairman, Ms. To Miu Yu. Good afternoon, Chairman, members. I speak on behalf of the Hong Kong Bars and Karaoke Rights Advocacy. Well, for our organization is established in 2005. Well, at that time, because there was a ban on tobacco smoking in Hong Kong, so we formed this organization. And at that time, the upstairs bars were thriving. Well, we had almost 300 members at that time. However, today, our number of members has dropped to 40 or 50. So by just looking at the number, you can see that in the past few years, many upstairs bars have folded. One of the reasons may be their competitiveness, the ban on smoking, and a 24-hour opening of the cross-border facilities, etc. Just now, Mr. Chen, sorry, it should be Mr. Watts who spoke just now, and also Mr. Hui also made his speech. Well, you have been making a lot of efforts in the past years, and actually you have attained some achievements. Many upstairs bars have closed. Well, so how many people will become unemployed? And how many people have suffered financial losses? I think there were many. So I would like to speak frankly. I do not operate an upstairs bar now. The reasons for the reasons I've stated above, but our organization still have 40 to 50 members who own upstairs bars. So when it comes to renewing the liquor license, they would encounter a lot of problems. For example, capacity limits, fire safety requirements. Every time when they renew the license, they would see that the rules have been tightened, in particular when it comes to capacity limits. Now we are looking at this set of guidelines. Well, Mr. Yao, chairman of the LLB, said that now you would only allow 90% of the capacity limits if it is an upstairs bar. Well, the number of upstairs bars has decreased, and we do not have many new bars like this. Well, in Tsim Sha Tsui, we have seen such a case. That is, this bar has an area of 900 square feet, but the capacity limit is only 19. So we are really working in a very poor environment. The last speaker is from Hong Kong Federation of Restaurants and Related Trades, Mr. Tam Hap Singh. Thank you, Chairman. For our federation, some of our members do operate bars. We have communicated with them concerning liquor license. Well, just now many related associations have expressed their views, and we also agree to most of their views. But I would like to supplement a few points. Now, for the seminar on liquor licensing, well, yes, we can consider doing that because that can strike a balance between the public and the operators. However, I think we should consider one more point. Now, will you contract out this kind of seminars, or the government itself will be organizing such seminars? Now, if the government organizes such seminars, it would be much more reliable. If you contract out the seminars, we would query the quality of these kind of seminars. Well, we know that such seminars are organized for our trade, so I hope that they can be more practical. For example, you talk more about operating hours, etc. Then when our people attend such seminars, they would really learn something. Otherwise, such seminars would just be in vain. And also, you should consider the work hours of our employees. Otherwise, they may not be able to attend. And when it comes to operation, we face a lot of challenges. For our trade, we have to pay very high rents per month. However, we do not operate for many hours per day. So that's not a long time for us to make money. And if you impose a 10% discount on the capacity limits, then it will give us more problems. Our trade is now already facing a lot of challenges. And we are talking about glass bottle producer responsibility scheme, etc. And if this is implemented, there will be more limitations for us. And also the government is talking about municipal solid waste charging, and all these will have an impact on our profits. And if there are so many restrictions and rules, I'm sure the trade will be affected seriously. So I hope that before any legislation or new regulation, please consult us so that a balance can be struck between our trade and public, and we can have a better working environment. Professor Chen and Mr. Yao, before we open the floor to our members, I would like to ask you to respond to what the deputation said just now. It seems that you are not pleasing either side. The trade thinks that you are tightening the regulation too much, and the residents think that you are not doing enough for them. And Mr. Yao would like to ask you this.
In relation to your guidelines, just now I log on to your website. I did not see any guidelines. Is it something new? It's not yet formulated. You will discuss it, and once everything is confirmed, you will upload it. This guideline is new. We now have some internal guidelines, so we can't see it on the website. I now understand. Just use a couple of minutes to say something before I open the floor for members. But I did not hear what Mr. Yao said. Mr. Yao, can you speak into the microphone and say the same thing again in relation to the guidelines? The guideline is new. We listen to views, and then we will finalize the guidelines, and then it will be uploaded on the LLB website. So no, it's because I did not find any guidelines on their website, and it's just confirmed by the chairman. Mr. Yao, anything else to add? No, I'll open the floor to members to ask questions. So far we have Claudia Mo, Wong Kok Heng, Helena Wong. In that order, 5 minutes each. Miss Claudia Mo. First, I'd like to talk to Mr. Lee Wei Hong. Please don't misunderstand that it's populist, that we're here to fight for votes and we'll just blindly go with the flow. Residents lodge complaints, and you are the owner. It's your business. You're making a profit. And if you are here because it is an issue that is close to your heart, you will have to try to put yourselves in our shoes. You said you're very frustrated. Please don't feel that. I know some youngsters who are operating some upstairs karaoke bars, and they have to conform to everything required by the board. Is it the case that you require them to have double glazed doors and windows? I think it will be very difficult for a karaoke bar to have that. And I agree with Mr. Yao from the Institution of Dining Art, who asked for a grace period. 5 years might be too long. Maybe you can the administration can consider a 3-year grace period. Who is to take the question? In relation to the karaoke bars, perhaps I will defer to the licensing office or the board. Mr. Yao, would you like to answer, or the PS? Or perhaps the FEHD, the licensing office? Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Lau. In relation to licenses, karaoke licenses, of course, this a different regime. Here we're talking about regulation on liquor licensed premises. Sorry, I was talking about karaokes. Are they the same as bars, or are they separate? Are they different? When it comes to karaoke, if they sell liquor, then they have to obtain a license. So in relation to the proposed guidelines, it's applicable to the karaoke, right? If it is a liquor selling premise, the board may consider imposing conditions. So consider, is it yes or no? What do you mean by consider? It's a liquor licensed premises. Is it a bar? Would it be subject to the restrictions of the new guideline? And Ms. Mo has asked a very good question because nobody knows what they're talking about. Upstairs bars, is it just a bar that is not at grade and is selling liquor? What if it is a karaoke that is selling liquor? Is it an upstairs bar? Mr. Yao, can you answer? Perhaps I would defer to the PS. Let me have a go. There is no legal definition of upstairs bars. I think the focus when it comes to premises that are not at grade, their main business is to sell liquor. If it is necessary to consider a capacity limit, then the board will consider a capacity limit. If the police or some departments do not propose a capacity limit, we don't normally, as far as I understand, that the board will not impose such a limit. What this proposal is about, we're talking about 400 premises that is under this category. There are about 6,000 liquor licensed premises. So we're talking about 6% of premises that may be subject to capacity limit. P.S. I have heard you, but I really don't know what you're talking about. Say, for example, if someone wants to open a karaoke, and Andy Zhang is called, the commissioner is called, we should be called and ask whether it needs a license. Of course, you have to apply for a liquor license. If a premises sells liquor, whether it's a karaoke or not, it will have to apply for a license. I was talking about capacity limit, and very often it depends on the department. They consider the circumstances and factors and then make a suggestion. So as long as it's a place that sells liquor, whether it's karaoke or not, whether you're upstairs or not, you will have to get you have to apply for a license. And sorry, Chairman, you've been using our time. You still haven't answered me. Grace period. Can we have a grace period? If you think 5 years is too long, what about 3 years? As I said at the beginning, after the consultation in 2011, the board has done a lot. And in relation to the procedure and guidelines, they're here to listen to views. Some people ask for 5 years. We'll listen. Well, we hear them, and the board will consider the comments. Next, Mr. Wong Kok-hing, to be followed by Ms. Helena Wong. I was a member of the board. I was directly elected, and after the municipal council was disbanded, I've been a member of the board for a number of years. I heard that they would have a discussion after hearing views, and that they will make a decision. I would like to say that I want them to come back with a preliminary decision. We have to know. Otherwise, we won't know what their final decision is. And I have some questions for the FHB and the Liquor Licensing Board. First, in Soho Central, has there been an expansion? I've heard from members of the public that they try to expand the Soho area in Central. So is it going to be expanded, or is it going to be kept the way it is, because this bothers residents? Second question. In relation to upstairs spas that are licensed, is it the case that they conform to all the evacuation and fire safety requirements? There were some press reports that there are quite a number of such bars in a single building. If that is the case, when there is a fire in buildings where upstairs bars cluster, can public safety be ensured? I know that there are representatives from the Fire Services Department. So can you tell us whether they have all passed, they have all met the requirements? And do you conduct safety inspections? How often? Have you ever found cases where a public passageway or means of escape is blocked? So first, can you come back to the panel before you upload the finalized guidelines? Can you give us that undertaking? LLB, Mr. Yao? I don't see any problem with that request. So the other two questions from Mr. Wong, who is to take them? Let me start first. Mr. Wong, you asked whether the Soho area in Central has expanded. We have not received any information that the Soho area will be expanded. About fire safety, as far as I understand, under the current mechanism, when the board before a board grant a license, departments will be consulted. They include the Fire Services Department on fire safety. For details, I will defer to my colleagues. Perhaps the FSD. Mr. Chiu or Mr. Yao? Mr. Yao? The microphone is yet to be switched on. Mr. Yao? The FSD check the buildings when applications are forwarded to us by the FEHD. We check to see if everything has met the requirements before we give our views. There are also some ad hoc inspections conducted. There's been occasions when upstairs bars were found to have contravened the legislations. Say, for example, blockage of a public passageway or means of escape, and we have taken action. Two of my questions are not clearly answered. First, the Undersecretary said that there was no information that the Soho area is expanded. I just want to know whether there is a change of policy to expand it. My second question, the FSD did not answer me. I asked, out of the 400 licensed premises, do they all meet all the requirements? That is, in case of fire, there will not be any problems. And are there regular inspections? Mr. Wong asked whether there is a policy on the Soho area. It's not asking about a factual it's not a factual question whether it's expanded. Mr. Wong's asking about the policy. I will defer to the PS. As far as I understand, there is no specific policy on the area. Whether it will be reduced or expanded, it depends on the business environment. From the administration's point of view, there is no such policy, whether it should be expanded or otherwise. Can I say that as a former member of the Liquor Licensing Board, well, it's unfortunate that I don't know where these officials were at the time when I was a member. The Soho area comprises of a number of streets, and whenever some premises have gone beyond that area, residents will complain. So there should be some information. And I also want to get some answers from FSD. So do all the licensed premises meet all the fire safety requirements? When we deal with upstairs bars applications, we conduct inspections on the address given to us by the FEHD. In the process, we will ensure that all the fire safety requirements are met. And in our past inspections, some of them are found to have contravened the law. That means the FSD did not answer my question. Of course, if they go to these premises one by one, they will all make sure that the requirements are met. What I was talking about is premises in the same building. Whether in case of fire, the public will not come to any harm. So from what I've heard, that you have not done an assessment that, say, for example, when there is a fire, that what the evacuation will be like for the 10 bars in a single building. Ms. Elena Wong. I've heard a lot of views. I've never been a member of the Liquor Licensing Board, and I don't operate any upstairs bars, and I don't go to bars at grade either. Seems that there are lots of problems, and I think we are here to think about how to deal with these problems. There are criticisms about the composition of the board. Some people would like to see more members from the sector to safeguard the interest of the sector. But of course, we're talking about protection of public interest. There are other people who think there is not enough members from the community. So would there be any reviews about the representativeness of the board? There are also criticisms that there is a lack of transparency. Some people mention that there is no complaint mechanism. There is also an allegation that there is no avenue of complaint, because the board will only approve or reject license applications. It's for the police or the FEHD that deals with complaints. So in the end, there is nowhere you can go to lodge a complaint, and you only focus on upstairs bars, not those at grade. So, Undersecretary or the board, how do you respond to the issues raised? How do you protect public interest? How do you take into account the voice of the sector?
Undersecretary. First of all, I would like to reiterate this. We are here to listen to members' views and deputations' views. Just now, the trade and representatives of residents have told us their views as well. So we will go back and we will take your views into consideration. When the LLB formulated the guidelines, it also conducted a review on the existing mechanism, that is, whether it still meets the needs of the times. Maybe Mr. Yao can give you more information on that. Mr. Yao? Thank you, Mr. Wong, for your question. As the Undersecretary said just now, we come here today to listen to your views. As for the guidelines, well, we will finalize them in due course, and we will report to this panel again. As for the complaints mechanism, the police are the enforcement agency of the relevant laws. As for noise nuisance, the EPD will be responsible for that. Most of the complaints now are lodged with these two departments. As for hygiene problems, complaints can be made to the FEHD. So there are already existing mechanisms to handle complaints. As for appeals, the Municipal Services Appeal Board is handling appeals concerning LLB decisions. So all these are existing mechanisms. As for protecting public interest, each week the LLB is doing this. That is, we will assess liquor license applications. We would look at the interests of the public and the interests of the trade, and we will have to strike a balance between the two. Just now, Mr. Wong asked about our composition. Now we have 11 members on our board, and they are all appointed by the Chief Executive. Some of them are from the social service sector. Some of them are from the press, from accounting, from the legal industries, and also there are 2 members who are from the catering industry. So it's like an epitome of society. And also we have DC members. So I think the existing LLB is pretty representative, and the interests of the community can be protected. Ms. Wong? Well, just now I asked a question. Well, we are told that there are no channels for certain complaints. You are saying that, well, the FHD, PD, FSD, the police, they are all handling this kind of complaints, but you cannot resolve the complaints. Well, we have a Yaochimong DC member here, and the Central and Western District Council made a lot of complaints. So obviously there are complaints that have not been resolved. Well, Mr. Yao, did you say just now that all the complaints will be handled by the police? Can you explain to Ms. Wong? Ms. Wong? Actually, we have former DC members sitting on our board. One of them has been a Central and Western DC member for 8 years. I myself have been a Wan-Chai DC member for 8 years as well. As for complaint mechanisms, as I said just now, the police would enhance the liquor license ordinance. They will enforce the liquor license ordinance, and a lot of complaints are made to the police. As for the renewal of liquor license and the modifications to licensing conditions, etc., we have all these records. So if it is said that there is no channel for complaints, I'm not sure that's true. It's just that the complainant may not get the result he wants. So people can just make complaints, but their problems concerning nuisance cannot be resolved, right? So would FEHD think about resolving these problems? Because these mechanisms obviously cannot solve the problems concerning nuisances brought to residents. Undersecretary? Just now Mr. Yao also talked about this. Well, it's difficult for us to know whether the problem lies with the complaint mechanisms themselves, or it's just the complainant that's not happy with the result. Well, we will look into that. But for these set of guidelines, well, noise nuisances are mentioned, and some recommendations are made there. I would like to follow on the number of premises, 413, and just now, what Mr. Wang said, the chairman said that you don't understand. Actually, I understand that. Well, the police will take the lead. If the police say that there are problems with a certain premises, then they will enforce the law. So it has nothing to do with the guidelines or the ordinance. The police would be the most powerful authority. But this kind of thinking is wrong. Mr. Wong has sat on the LLB. I was also on the LLB. Even though the Urban Council was abolished, I have still been sitting on the LLB. I have been a LLB member for 9 years. Well, nobody has complained against me, saying that I protected the interest of the trade and I didn't discharge my duty as an LLB member. I remember, well, I'm sure that for my colleagues at that time, they would not criticize me in such a way. Well, we can say that what the residents say are always right. I believe that when I and Mr. Wong Kok-heng were LLB members, we did a good job and we struck a good balance between the trade and the community. We didn't turn a blind eye to problems in the trade. Now for 413, now you're talking about a number of upstairs bars. Well, we legislators are very familiar with laws. I think you don't have to pay attention to this. I think the police are the most powerful force behind all this. Well, imposing a capacity limit on bars, well, I remember that in the past, the LLB only did this. That is when there was dancing endorsements. That was during my years or the years before my term. That was how we do. That is, we will only impose a capacity limit on a premises when there is a dancing endorsement. And what is that for? Because when the police come, they can order the people to turn on the lights and start counting the number of customers there. Otherwise, how can you start counting the number of customers? Because there is no capacity limit in the license. Now, some people will think that imposing a capacity limit is very simple. So as long as there is a safety margin, you have to talk about capacity limits. But I remember that when I was an LLB member at that time, we had to force the buildings departments to impose a capacity limit, and the BD didn't want to do that. They thought that if the fire escape was all right, then that would be okay. So I think the present situation is absurd. You're talking about safety margin. Yes, I've heard about stampeding. But that's not about capacity limit. It's because you lock the back door and people cannot escape in case of a fire. Well, what are you talking about? Alcohol selling margin or what? Even though you comply with the capacity limits, there can be a stampede. Even in a cinema, people do not drink alcohol, there can be a stampede. So I think this is really superfluous. Well, our members always say that we should cut filibustering, but I think the LLB is now cutting its own power. Now you're saying that you would take several factors into account, but you do not have to consider such factors because now you are handing the power over to the police. Now maybe the police should lead the LLB if the police do not like a certain bar, they can enforce their laws. Well, I have vented my grievances, and in the next round, I would ask my questions. Well, what they said really didn't please my ears, and Mr. Wong told us the correct answer. Yes, now the police are taking the lead. So, what's the definition for those 413 premises? Do you include clubs? Okay, Mr. Tommy Cheung will ask a second round of questions.
Mr. Raymond Chan, thank you, and I thank deputations for coming here, especially those from the trade. But don't get the misconception that we are on an opposing end with you. Well, we just want nuisance cost to a minimum when you're operating your business. There's the consensus. I know someone who's had a very good bar business, but he closed down because of complaints. And I want to focus on the 90% of capacity limit. This is a rather interesting point. Mr. Tommy Cheung raised this point. I don't know if you can answer me. How was this criterion decided? Say, for example, the size of the premises. How is it going to be enforced? Were there any prosecutions done? Well, I've never known anyone who will have a counting the number of people entering the premises. I'm not talking about whether they are law-abiding or not. We're talking about enforcement. Is it enforceable? Has it ever been enforced? I will defer to the Buildings Department. Is it Mr. Yu? Thank you. The role of the Buildings Department is to check the application submitted by the FEHD. We will check on means of escape, taking into account the use of the premises. Then we will come up with a capacity limit. It works this way. If there is a bar, there is a calculation of 4.5 meters per person. If there are seats, about the same, and then we will work out the capacity limit. We also take into account the design of the premises, working out the total amount of people, and then the number of escape points. We also take into account other premises on the same floor. We then work out the width, the number of fire escape, and then we look at the entire building. There is a fire, and there is a means of escape, a fire escape, and then we will look at the total evacuation value. If it's exceeded, then it may not be a suitable premises with a license. The LLB is decides whether to grant a license. They take into other factors. I just explained about what we will look at when we are referred an application. I'm afraid your question isn't answered, Mr. Chan. What about past enforcement actions and number of prosecutions? That is under the purview of the police, and I would defer to the police. Mr. Tse or Mr. Wong? I'll answer. I'm there. In terms of capacity limit, we check that as well. Very often, the capacity limit is not exceeded. main concern is safety of the patrons. And that's why we make suggestions in this regard. So there's never been a prosecution when the capacity limits exceeded. Well, you have to allow me time to find the information after the meeting. Perhaps the trade can tell me, and I don't think that anyone will actually have a counter at the door counting the number of people entering the premises. Under Secretary, may I give a brief reply? Well, I thank you for asking questions on details. My understanding as to why there is a safety margin after we have done the consultation, and also we have taken into account the fact that there were complaints made in the past. When there are too many people in an upstairs bar, there is evidence. So if people are under intoxication, that it would impair their judgment and also coordination. But across the board, 10% discount is not very scientific, because there may be bars on different floors and you adopt an across-the-board criteria of 90%. This is what I'm going to do. I don't hear the answers to the majority of the questions, so I asked the clerk to write a list of the questions asked, and the list will be sent to Mr. Yao, the chairman, and also the secretary of the bureau, for them to be followed up. Mr. Peter Zhang. Chairman, you are also in the Welfare Services Panel. For RCHDs, is 6 square meters per person. Just now it says that 4.5 square meters per patron. So for a premises of 1,000 square feet, we're talking about 20. We're just talking about bar benches, and if it's seating, then it's 1 square meters per person. Well, I'm not familiar with this because I seldom frequent bars, less so for upstairs bars. Is there any difference in the assessment criteria when it comes to upstairs bars and bars at grade? Is it the only difference? Are they just the license holder will have to undergo some training and also of the 90% capacity limit? Mr. Yao. We have set out in the paper that we will mainly consider 3 factors. First, whether the license holder is a fit and proper person. Second, we consider the premises, whether it is a place that is suitable for selling liquor, say, for example, hygiene, structure, location. We also take into account public interest, whether it's upstairs or at grade or bar. Applications are vetted according to these 3 factors. And as I've said, that we take into account public interest. And the upstairs bars we've been talking about, there was a consultation in 2011, and we saw that crime involving upstairs bars and other problems involving upstairs bars are higher than others. There is also the issue of evacuation. So capacity limit is proposed, and we will take that into consideration in assessing applications. And we now propose to impose a 90% of the criteria of limiting the capacity to 90% of the normal capacity limit. Other criteria are the same. It's just that for upstairs spas, we propose to tighten regulation. What about license holders? The consideration is the same, whether it is upstairs bars or bars at grade. We now make a proposal. Previously, the attendance of seminars is voluntary, but now in the guideline, we propose to make it mandatory. So the only difference is the 90%. Is that right? For the safety margin of a capacity limit, yes. I have a question for the FSD. 90%. Do you think it's in order? Have you discussed about the percentage, whether it should be 100% or 80%? FSD, who is to take the question? Thank you. Capacity limit is under the purview of the buildings department. I'd like to defer to them. No, but I've heard already from the BD. They talk about order, and I am concerned about fire safety. Did you and the BD discuss it? And to give us more information about the safety margin? Perhaps I will supplement. Mr. Yu, just now I talk about the calculation. That is, for the bar bench is 4.5 square meters per person. I was talking about staff members, and for the other areas, 1 square meters per person. That is the normal circumstances. And then we will work out the facilities for safety evacuation. What the board proposes is a proposal. I think for the 90%, I think it would be better for the Bureau or the board to answer. I think this is something to do with evacuation and fire safety. It will be more appropriate for the FSD to answer, given their expertise. I think your question is asked, and what we see is that the ball is passed from one court to another. Deputy Chairman, well, I'm sitting not next to you, but I've been a legislator for quite some time, and now I see that there are occasions when questions are not really answered. I want to ask Mr. Lee from the Hong Kong, the Federation of Hong Kong and Kowloon Ballroom and Nightclub Merchants. He talks about populism. So what's your view? Have upstairs bars caused a nuisance to nearby residents? If not, then what's the crux of the problem? Why do residents complain against you? Can he have 1 minute? Mr. Lee? That's the way it is. On one side is the resident, on the other, the operators. We are on two opposing sides. We've read a lot from the press that there are objections. The supermarkets offer special discounts. There is a long queue. It blocks public passageway. You have to balance. You have to strike a balance. We've been regulated by you. We're using the licensing system for many years. We have to get 7 or 8 types of licenses. We have to make 7 to 8 payments to the administration, to the government. I think we're not talking about upstairs bars. We're talking about upstairs license. On which floor should the bars be when they think they should get an upstairs license? I think we're talking about upstairs license, not upstairs bars. Thank you for your explanation. I think the nature of your business is different from other shops because you're closer to residents. Your time's up. There is a noise and some other problems, and it caused a nuisance to residents, and I think we're all here trying to find a solution. Perhaps the Bureau will take into account questions asked by members. Well, now I'd like to say some upstairs bars are operating in the form of a club. There is a membership system to circumvent regulation. So what measures do you have to deal with this mode of operation? Would you consider regulating such premises as well? I'll defer to the board. Mr. Yao, or the PS. There is a different types of a license for clubs. It's a different system. It's not under the purview of a liquor licensing board, but there is a regulatory regime. Deputy Chairman. Sorry, I'm not satisfied with your explanation. Can you give me more information? What will you do in the future? Because they do so to circumvent regulation. I know that there is a system, but they circumvented the system. It's called a club, but in essence, it's an upstairs bar. Let me say again that all premises selling liquor have to be covered by a liquor license. Maybe the majority of these premises are restaurants, so they will also be covered by a restaurant license. Some of them are run as a club, and they will be covered by a club license. So in short, there is regulation. If we tighten the liquor license regime, all premises covered by a liquor license the regulation will be tightened. Mr. Yao. Club license is under the HAB. They have to make applications. So premises selling liquors have to apply for a license from the Liquor Licensing Board. That includes clubs.
好啦，嗱，咁第一輪是。
Okay, the first round of questions has ended, and there are 3 members for the second round, including Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Lena Wong, and Mr. Tommy Cheung. 3 minutes each. And Ms. Wong is also going to move a motion. We are going to handle that, so please be succinct. Mr. Wong. Well, Chairman, for the first round of questions, I didn't get a satisfactory answer from the administration, so I would like to make use of the time now. Now, for the FHB and the LLB, I hope they will attach importance to fire safety and emergency access of upstairs bars. Because in recent years, there have been many more upstairs bars, and the density is in buildings is very high. So if stress tests are not conducted on these buildings, in case of fire, there may be a huge problem. The customers, the staff, tenants, and bar operators in these buildings, can they be evacuated to a safe place fast enough? I think the public has raised a lot of queries, and the press has been reporting on this, but I don't see the government or the LLB has done anything to address these problems up to now. There have been no policies to tackle these problems up to the present moment. In case any accident happens, you will be held responsible. That's a dereliction of duty. This is very serious. This is a dereliction of duty because we're talking about human lives. This is a serious problem. I left the LLB, but over the past few years, I don't think the government has done anything proactive, and it has never submitted a relevant paper to us concerning these issues. So I am disappointed. I would like to make use of my 3 minutes to stress the importance of this. The SAR government cannot overlook this issue. As for the FSD, it didn't give me a satisfactory reply. Of course, the FHD will refer cases to you and you will look at these cases, but you have not answered my questions. So your answer is really meaningless. Because LLB is a very important licensing authority. It's just like a jury. If you do not look into this, it's also a dereliction of duty. And if FEHD does not look into this problem, it's also a dereliction of duty. Ms. Helena Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to ask about a recent court case. Earlier on, a Wan Chai police officer was sentenced to 1 year's imprisonment because he enjoyed the food and alcohol for free at a restaurant, and then he supported the liquor license of that restaurant be renewed, and the judge said that this may involve a large-scale corruption case. It's not just about that supervisor. So this may be a huge problem. So I would like to ask the LLB and the police this. Now, for the LLB and FHB, will you review all the cases that involve this particular police team? And also, I would like to ask the police. The judge said that the whole team may be collaborating with that police officer. So would you follow up on this case, and do you have a mechanism in place to prevent the recurrence of such incidents? And also a question for LLB. Now, in the past, did you just rely on the police opinions when it comes to issuing liquor license? Now, in the past, if the police supported the application, have you ever vetoed the application? So did you just follow the police recommendations? So Mr. Yao would answer questions number 1 and 2. As for the second question, maybe the police can answer that. Mr. Chair or Mr. Wong can answer that. So LLB Chairman. Well, you're talking about question 1 and 3. So what are questions 1 and 3? One is whether there will be a review Second is whether the police is taking over, or the police are taking over our power. Well, for the police, for the recent case, as the chairman of LLB, I have written to the Commissioner of Police to show my concern. We hope that the police force would review its existing practice when it comes to the recommendation concerning liquor license, because we want them to adopt an impartial approach. Well, actually the police opinion is just one of the opinions. We also listen to other stakeholders' opinions, other government departments' opinions, as well as the residents' opinions. Well, the police opinions are important, but it's not that we just follow the police recommendations. This point has to be clarified. The Liquor Licensing Board is an independent statutory authority. We have 11 departments and we are very professional. Well, would the police like to answer Ms. Wong's questions, Mr. Chair? The police attach huge importance to the integrity of our officers. We have very clear guidelines concerning misconduct and conflict of interest. There is also a declaration of interest mechanism. We also have internal promotion, education, and training so as to enhance the integrity of our officers. I would like to stress that we have very stringent requirements concerning police officers' conduct. We adopt a zero-tolerance approach when it comes to corruption and bribery. As for liquor licensing, now after making our assessment, we would make recommendations to the license office, and then the license office will be discussing with the LLB. The LLB would listen to views of different stakeholders and departments, and then the LLB will make an independent decision. Well, I asked whether the police would review that particular team's work. I mean the One Child team. Well, you are saying that there is a declaration of interest system and things like this should not happen. But this is what the judge said. He's not just talking about Superintendent Wong. He says that his whole team may be problematic. So do you have a mechanism to handle this problem? I think your question is very clear. It's up to them whether they want to answer or not. That, yes, will you review the decisions made by that team? Well, this case is not over yet. ICAC is looking at it, so we cannot answer your question right now. Okay, Ms. Wong, you can continue to follow up. Mr. Tommy Cheung, before you ask your questions, well, I would like to say this. Well, I'm the chairman of this panel, and I will exercise my power. This meeting will be extended by 15 minutes to 4:45. Well, Chairman, I was impolite just now. I didn't thank the deputations for coming here, and I didn't thank the government officers for attending our meeting. Now I would like to say this. In particular, I would like to thank the chairman of the LLB. In the past, we tried to invite LLB chairman to come, and they didn't attend our meetings. This is the first time that we have a LLB chairman here, so I think he's really very courageous. So I'm not attacking him personally, but I'm criticizing the LLB. Now, I would like to thank the deputations. Well, as far as I understand, there should be more people from the trade attending. Well, maybe some of them are under pressure, so that's why some of them are absent today. Well, anyway, I would like to thank them for coming to our meeting. Well, Chairman, you said just now that after the meeting you will write a letter to them listing all our questions. Well, just now I've asked about the club liquor license. Are the clubs included in your number 413? So where does this number come from? From the police or what? Well, Chairman, I think we should follow up on this. Well, I think it's absurd to put together a definition for upstairs bars. I don't think there is any scientific evidence for that.
In relation to 5F1, it talks about the number of licensed premises reaching half of the number of premises in the building. What building? Residential, commercial? What premises are we talking about? If it's 10%, but perhaps there are only 2 floors, but each floor is huge, 200,000 square feet. So half of it will get a license and the other half not. So you see that this guideline it's incomprehensible. I can give you an endless list of examples. I can have a discussion on my own with the Liquor Licensing Board. I represent the sector. We have to be very careful. This is one of the 2 points raised by Ms. Helena Wong. What about reviewing the license granted by the same Wan Chai team? There is a complaint. There was some objections against this premises. But the police did not object to. But then the license was not granted. I don't know for whom the board works for. Just now it said that wherever you sell liquor, then you need a license. No, 7-Eleven sell liquor, but you don't have to get a license. I think some restaurants and licensed premises are blamed because of problems caused by 7-Elevens. I don't know why. Well, I do have some objections about how things are handled by the board and the police, not the other departments, because they are quite, they are very professionals. And I don't understand why club license is under the purview of the HAB. Ms. Helena Wong, you want to talk about your motion? Yes, but I have a question first. Where it talks about standard licensing conditions in the Annex 6. The licensee shall not permit any common prostitutes or reputed thieves to assemble or remain on the club premises. This is under the standard licensing conditions imposed on club liquor licenses. It's really bizarre. You don't have prostitute or thieves etched on your forehead. How can you tell? Then why do they differentiate prostitutes? What about those who use prostitutes? Is this outdated? And I think you have to read this together with condition 5, that you don't want the premises to be used for an immoral purpose. But I do think that this should be reviewed. That's why I have this motion. Then you may as well present your motion. We've listened to a lot of views, and I don't think they can all be handled in the meeting of 2 or 3 hours. I appeal to members to give me support. My motion is to urge the FHB to comprehensively review the composition, functions, transparency of the Liquor Licensing Board, and about the establishment of complaint mechanisms to ensure that public interest is safeguarded. We still have some time, perhaps, so we can see how the FHB follows up the issue. Now you give the police so much power. It's a chance for corruption to breed. How do you tackle this problem? Just now, Mr. Hui mentioned about overseas jurisdictions. The liquor licensing board members are elected, and there is more transparency. If this motion is passed, then we will be able to follow it up. Mr. Tommy Cheung, you want to talk about this motion? Sorry, I would like to do that too, but before I do that, I'd like to say something. I can't list out all my questions. Perhaps you allow me to send a letter to the clerk to ask the administration questions. And one more thing. The requirement about a number of years of liquor experience of the liquor licensees. Well, I think it is rather impossible. What if I ask members of the board to have several years of experience? Are they going to attend courses? No, it is unnecessary. This will stifle the business environment. If there are questions that haven't been asked in this panel meeting, you can give the questions to the Secretariat. The clerk will compile a list of questions for the Bureau to answer. I'd like to listen to the Undersecretary and Mr. Yao. When you receive the list, can you undertake that within a certain period of time give us a reply? Think about it. Now we deal with Ms. Helena Wong's motion. Any objections from members? Any abstentions? So it's endorsed unanimously. Undersecretary, would you like to have a word with Mr. Yao about the way forward once you've received our list? How long it would take for you to give us a reply? Thank you. It depends on the length of the list. It won't be short. We can undertake that we'll do as far as possible and as much as possible to answer questions. Mr. Cheung, of course you have some idea about the list. How much time should we give the administration? Well, then it depends on how efficient the administration think it is. A week or two, maybe. But if, Chairman, you are in a generous mood, then you can give them a month or two. Well, I don't mind waiting for 3 months to get the guidelines for them to answer our questions. Mr. Yao said he came to listen to views and then decide on the way forward. Now he's heard objections and support. They can have further discussions. But you can't have the guidelines finalized and not answer us. Mr. Yao already said that before they finalize on the guideline, they will come back to us first. So the order is that they they will come back to the panel before they upload the finalized guideline. The Undersecretary is right. They have yet to see the length of the list, so they don't know how long it will take. But we see some time bombs that may go off any time. Of course, we don't want to see any time bomb going off, but the clerk will compile the list as quickly as possible, and then they will liaise with the Bureau to find out the time they will need. If it's an unreasonable proposal, then we will talk to you further. I think that's how we will deal with it. Anything else? There are no other issues, though there is